Rome didn't crucify philosophers. It crucified threats. Jesus of Nazareth was stripped, beaten, and nailed to a cross not because he healed the sick, not because he preached love, but because too many people were listening. This isn't a Christmas story. This isn't a sermon. This is the account of how a peaceful man became dangerous to power, and why his death was never an accident. It was an execution designed to send a message. A message that backfired so spectacularly, it changed the world. Jesus didn't arrive like a revolutionary. No army, no palace, no political title. He was born into poverty, raised in obscurity, and trained as a carpenter. And right there, that was the first problem. Because for centuries, the Jewish people had been waiting for a Messiah, a savior. They expected a warrior king, a general who would gather an army and drive the Roman legions into the sea. They were looking for a man of force, someone to overthrow their oppressors with violence. Instead, they got a man who said, "Blessed are the meek." A man who taught that the peacemakers were the children of God. This wasn't the fiery rebellion they had prayed for. This was a message of radical humility, and it disappointed nearly everyone who was hoping for a war. He was the wrong kind of Messiah. He didn't promise to break their chains with a sword. He promised to break them with a spirit that Rome couldn't touch. And to the powerful, that was a far more confusing, and ultimately more dangerous, proposition. So why did people follow him? If he wasn't the military leader they expected, why did the crowd swell? Jesus didn't build his influence through traditional authority. He built it through proximity. He went to the people that society had thrown away. He ate with tax collectors, who were seen as collaborators with Rome. He touched lepers, the untouchables. He forgave sins without asking for permission from the religious establishment. He didn't deliver his message from a high pulpit. He delivered it from a fishing boat, on a mountainside, in the homes of the poor. He never attacked Rome directly. He didn't need to. He attacked the entire concept of hierarchy. When he said, "The last shall be first, and the first shall be last," he wasn't just speaking in abstract spiritual terms. Everyone listening understood the social and political implications. He was telling the poor they were honored, the outcasts they were welcome, and the powerful that their entire system of status was an illusion. He was dismantling the social pyramid from the bottom up, not by force, but by dignifying the people everyone else had written off. That's how you build a movement without an army. You give people back the humanity that was stolen from them. Rome tolerated all sorts of religions. The empire was filled with different gods and cults. What Rome did not tolerate, under any circumstances, was instability. And Jesus, in his quiet way, was a master of creating it. He gathered crowds without weapons. He spoke in parables that sounded like simple farm stories, but landed like targeted accusations. When he looked at the religious leaders and said, "You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel," everyone knew he was calling out their hypocrisy. When he called them whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but full of death on the inside, he was exposing their corruption without ever needing to name a single name. That's infinitely more dangerous than an open rebellion. A rebellion can be crushed with swords. But an idea that spreads through the populace, revealing the rot in the system, that's a threat that legions can't defeat. He was making the invisible power structures visible, and for those in charge, that was unforgivable. Then, Jesus did something reckless. Something that crossed the line. He went to the temple in Jerusalem, the very heart of Jewish religious and economic life, and he started flipping tables. He drove out the money changers who were exchanging currency for profit, and the merchants selling sacrificial animals. This wasn't a random burst of anger. This was symbolic violence. It was a direct assault on the fusion of religion and profit, a system that had turned the house of God into a marketplace. That single act sealed his fate. It was a direct challenge not just to the priests, but to the entire economic engine that supported them and cooperated with Roman rule. From that moment on, the question wasn't if he would be killed. It was how soon the authorities could make it happen. He had publicly declared war on their corruption, and they had no choice but to answer. What's fascinating is what happened next. Jesus didn't resist arrest. When the guards came for him in the Garden of Gethsemane, his disciple Peter drew a sword and cut off a man's ear. Jesus immediately stopped him, healing the man. That detail is critical. He was not killed for committing an act of violence. He was killed for refusing to play the game of power. When he was brought before the high priest and then the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, he barely defended himself. Power expects a certain response. It expects fear. It expects negotiation. It expects a fight. Jesus gave it silence. His silence was an act of defiance, a refusal to recognize the legitimacy of their kangaroo court. They wanted him to beg. They wanted him to argue. Instead, he stood there, a lone man, holding onto a truth that didn't need a defense. It was his final, and perhaps most powerful sermon. Pontius Pilate didn't believe Jesus was guilty. The historical and biblical accounts are clear on this. He saw a man who was no military threat. But for a Roman governor in a volatile province, justice is rarely about truth. It's about stability. It's about politics. The crowd was agitated, the religious leaders were demanding blood, and Pilate had a choice: risk a riot to save one innocent man, or sacrifice that man to keep the peace. So, in a gesture that has echoed through history, he washed his hands, absolving himself of responsibility. He chose politics over justice. It's a choice powerful people have been making ever since. And with that, the sentence was passed. Crucifixion was not just a method of execution. It was a form of political theater. It was public, it was slow, and it was humiliating. The goal was to send a clear message to anyone else thinking of causing trouble. This is what happens when you challenge the order of Rome. Jesus was mocked by the soldiers, abandoned by most of his followers, and executed between two common criminals, as if to say his crime was no different from theirs. From every visible angle, this was a complete and utter failure. The movement was crushed. The leader was dead. His followers had scattered in fear. The cross was meant to be the final word, the symbol of his defeat. It was designed to erase him from memory. That is the great twist in this story. Because the cross, which was meant to silence him forever, did the opposite. It exposed the brutality and moral bankruptcy of the system that killed him. It became a mirror, showing the world what happens when power fears truth. Rome thought killing Jesus would end the movement. Instead, it multiplied it. But not through revenge. Not through another cycle of violence. It grew through an idea that was solidified by his death, that true power doesn't come from domination, but from sacrifice. That love is stronger than fear. That death is not the end. Jesus didn't overthrow the Roman Empire with force. He outlived it.